All right, welcome to episode 2 of the Monsters of Geek podcast. I'm your editor in chief, Aaron. With us today is our resident mythical snow creature, making his and my brother, the coolest little brother ever in this universe, Mr. Joe Yeti Collier.
Hi,
What's up, man?
what's going on?
Not much. So episode 2, we made it to episode 2. Landmark for us. We didn't get canceled after the pilot episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. For the ones that are tuning in on Google Hangout, I believe I can see you guys chat now. I just downloaded a plugin, and you can do it through the comment section of the YouTube page. So just or the comment section that you're looking at there. So I think I should be able to keep track if you guys want to talk to us. That would be really cool. Joe, let's talk about a little bit, kind of jump into it just a little bit. Let's talk about, you went and saw Deadpool today, correct?
I did.
Okay. Without any spoilers, because obviously not everybody's seen this movie, and we all hate spoilers. Talk about just a little bit what you thought about it, and just reflect on it just a little bit.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was it's in the top 3 of my comic book movies of all time. Probably number 2.
What's number 1?
Probably Guardians.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think Guardians really kind of set the pace for this one. I know it's not as raunchy as Deadpool, but it did kind of push the PG-13 limit to the limit, per se.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then, with Daredevil on Netflix, I think that helped it too, because I think Marvel sees that the kids we were that grew up reading these comic books are now adults, and we are responsible adults, and we like adult comic book movies. So Deadpool is, I'm not going to say the first rated R comic book movie, because Batman, but it opens up a new page on violence in comic book movies.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we all know that Deadpool is a pretty violent character, even the comics, and comics has gotten much violent as far as what they allow in there. Marvel trying to be kid friendly to a certain extent as well, always trying to allowing more to kind of go, especially someone like Deadpool, who's a mercenary. I mean, mercenary shoots and kills people. I mean, there's really no way around that. Mercenaries that don't kill people are usually not very successful mercenaries, especially in comics. So yeah, I think from what I understand, the violence is pretty over the top. I saw something really funny, a little comic book that Iron Man was kind of consoling Captain America, and Deadpool was like, "Hey, how'd you guys like the movie?" And Tony was like, "Even that's a little bit too much for me, or even too much for what I would do." And then Captain America was like, "Oh, the language, the violence, So it is pretty much over the top, and that's what I've read about it. You talked about Guardians a little bit. I want to talk about in Daredevil just a little bit here in a couple of minutes. I will just go ahead and talk about it. You said you wanted to kind of the way that Marvel is, I guess, kind of approaching violence, especially with Daredevil and Deadpool, and kind of not necessarily embracing it, but very much saying, hey, not all of our heroes are Avengers. Not all of our heroes, are opposed to killing, are opposed to really beating somebody up really bad to make sure they stop them, like Daredevil. You said you want to talk about a little bit how you feel like, you talked about the violence a little bit. We both watched the Daredevil clips. How do you feel about that as far as the violence that Marvel's kind of embracing with their more street level kind of, more gray area heroes?
I think, we've seen poor attempts at Daredevil movies and poor attempts at Punisher movies. I mean, the Daredevil movie, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great when it first came out. Ben Affleck and all that. The show, I think, lets them put a little bit more Daredevil in it, like just the dirty, dark streets of Hell's Kitchen.
Right. We both know Daredevil is, especially with the previews and stuff that we've watched, especially bringing in such a violent character as a Punisher, which it really isn't, as far as what he does, isn't a great character. He doesn't mind to kill people, blow people up, stab people, poison people, torture people, whatever he wants to do there. I think it's really nice to see that Marvel is drawing this line between, hey, this is just like they do in the comics, here's the Avengers, they're nice and clean, and they're the public team, and they may do some shady stuff here or there, but they try not to kill people, and they're always celebrated as the big heroes. And then you look at someone like Daredevil or the Punisher or Deadpool, and there's a line drawn there. And you can even, to a certain extent, add Spider-Man in there on certain stories because he is more of a street level hero, at least up until after what they've kind of done with him after Secret Wars. But even Spider-Man is more of the squeaky clean, more power or great power, great responsibility type stuff. So I think as far as that goes, I think it's really cool that they're drawing that same line that they did in the comics. That hey, these guys are super violent. They beat people up. They have to because who they're dealing with. I think it's a refreshing way to see them bring the comic world into the movies and TV.
I agree. I mean, because they have the rating system for the comic books for a reason. Mm-hmm. So I mean, why not embrace?
It's like they have the rating system for movies
and video games. Why not embrace that in your comic book shows? I mean, if Punisher is a mature comic book, it's gonna be violent. Same with Daredevil. I mean, I'm not sure if all Daredevil comics are mature ratings. I know they had a couple runs where they were, but I mean, you got to embrace that. I mean, that's what I like about. I mean, Punisher's been one of my favorite comic book characters for a while, and you can contest to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to see a Punisher that I've been wanting to see.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Punisher and Daredevil. Those guys have been, more mature rated comics for a better part of 10 years. Punisher was kind of brought back into the Marvel Universe proper near the end of the last decade, but then they made him like Frankencastle or whatever, and kind of messed up the character just a little bit. And then you look at Daredevil, and after he was basically took over by the hand and almost destroyed Hell's Kitchen, I think they moved him to San Francisco or something. Or they moved him away and kind of made him more not whimsical, but much more happier kind of Matt Murdock, and that's a good change because the hero had been kicked around for 10 years. Yeah. But and I think now they're starting to go back more darker to match more of the TV show. But Daredevil is still very much a Marvel, not necessarily an A+ player, but he can be when the story dictates it. You're never going to see this guy in a cosmic battle or anything like that. But as far as they're noir characters, they're street level characters. I mean, he has to be number one in my book. I mean, there's been some great stories with Daredevil and Hell's Kitchen, and I hope they kind of go back to that.
I agree with that as well. I mean, come on, we finally get to see the bad boy that Rob Zombie sung about,
Right. By the way, that was a pretty good soundtrack for that movie, and I know there's a lot of new metal stuff in it, but it wasn't really that bad.
Hey, I still bump it. I found it at a thrift store.
There you go.
Down, Daredevil.
There we go. That's a great song too, man. I got to dig that back out. Let's talk about just kind of shoot the crap a little bit here. I went to North Carolina this week, and basically me and my wife we just been way too busy as far as work. And then
where did you go?
North Carolina.
Come on and raise up.
We kind of got out of town a little bit for just a little day trip. We actually work at a soup kitchen and has started a soup kitchen locally here, and that was the week of Valentine's Day and then a 7-day stretch of work. So we really didn't get to celebrate all that much. So we went to we loved both antique. We like to go look at old stuff. I like to look for old video games and comics and stuff. And both myself and Joe, our mom, really loved antique, so we both have appreciation for older furniture and older stuff, and just like to go hunt for stuff. We're very much old souls in that way. So we went down there, and we went to Boone, North Carolina, and some of the surrounding areas that had a lot of antique stores, and we kind of looked around a little bit. And most of those antique stores, because it's a big ski community down there, and most of those antique stores actually close in the winter. I don't know why. Shauna brought up a good point that maybe skiers don't buy furniture and take it home. They're there to ski or to hang out at the lodge or whatever they do. So a lot of them was closed, but a lot of them was super expensive. More, kind of premium furniture type of antique stuff instead of old stuff you refinish or just cheap stuff you can make look pretty cool. So we went to this thrift store. I can't remember the name of it. Just one we caught while we were actually closer to Boone than we were with the other antique stores. And in the window, I look over and I'm like, that looks like a Sega Pico. Now, for people who don't know what a Sega Pico is, it's a system kind of like a Leapfrog before the Leapfrog got super popular. It's basically like an educational system. Had the Sega logo on it. It would come with like a cartridge and then a book that would come with it. So you put the cartridge down, you'd open it up, put the cartridge down, and you put the book on the top open part. It's kind of like a bigger looking DS without a screen. So you open it up, you had the little cartridge to the side of the top portion of it, put it down, you had a book, and you would follow the book, and you had this like little interactive pen thing. Pretty rare system. I think they stopped releasing. I know they stopped releasing game around 97, 98 as far as the educational stuff. So it's more of a rare system. You don't see them very often, especially out in the wild. They go for about 50 or $60 if you have a game with it, and if it works, obviously. So I go look in the window and I'm staring. I was like, that is a Sega Pico. So I go in and I ask the lady, and obviously the boss wasn't there. So, I had to wait for like almost 25 minutes to figure out how much it was because the tag had faded. So it had been there, sitting there for a while. And Joe knows I'm a haggler. I don't buy stuff at full price if I don't have to. Not that I'm trying to rip people off, but I'm also trying to get, especially something that no one else will buy. I mean, that thing's been sitting there for probably over a year in the window. So I go up to the lady in 25 minutes, and I'm a cheapskate. Long story short, I didn't buy it. Basically, the woman wanted about 25 for it. It goes for about 50 or 60 online, and I'll be honest, I was getting it to flip or to trade in or to get something that I really wanted because I don't collect systems I don't play. So just to see the Pico, it was going to be flipped or traded towards something that I really wanted because we was going. I'll talk about the game store here in a minute when I got, but I had to decline. Well, a woman wanted 25. She said 15. I was willing to go 10 because I'm a cheapskate. And told her, look, I don't know if it works. It's been sitting there for a while. I just don't feel comfortable spending even 15 on it and being out $15 if it doesn't work. So I ended up passing, but it was really cool just to see it. Shauna saw my eyes light up and she was like, what is it? And I was like, it's a Sega Pico. And she's like, what? I know that some of our friends online was liking some statuses of mine. Ended up didn't get it, but it was pretty cool to kind of see it. I say the next time we go, it's probably still there, and I may be able to get it. But I kind of wish I would have got it. But in the same sense, it's like I don't know if it worked, and I'm very weary unless I get it for dirt cheap. If it worked, good thing it had all the connections and stuff, so it wasn't missing anything, and even had a game with it. But yeah, just didn't want to take the risk on it. But it's pretty cool to see that.
Just tell the truth and say that you got kicked out of the thrift store because Pity Pablo came on and you took your shirt off and waved it above your head.
No, yeah, I went through a tear. I just massacred the store because I was so mad they wouldn't give it to me. But seriously, we waited for a good 25, 30 minutes for that woman to call back. And the woman was like, I just can't. I mean, I don't know what the process is. I can't. And I was like, well, why do you work here? No offense, but you would think that you would have a little bit of leeway with prices, but it took for a while. And I thought maybe because I waited so long that the one would vouch for me and I'd get it for 10, but I probably should have bought it for 15, but like I said, I'm a cheapskate. Ended up going to another game shop about an hour and a half from Boone. So it was a little bit out of the way, but it's a shop that I think both of us follow. It's called Game Swap. Mm-hmm. And it's in Lincoln, small town of Lincoln, North Carolina. Really nice shop. They have a lot of tournaments and stuff there. I got a big arcade in the back. People were there playing Smash Brothers and all that good stuff, kind of like a community game store, which is really cool. And ended up grabbing some stuff. They had so much good stuff. A lot of rare games, a lot of rare gems, had some really cool toys. They actually had a Technodrome from the Turtles, but didn't have the eye. So they selling it for about 45. But, I kind of, even if the stuff is missing on the inside, you got to have the eye. So I ended up not grabbing that, even though I'm still searching for one that's halfway decent. Ended up getting a couple games that I wanted for Sega, Vector Man 1 and 2, complete in the box. So I was really, really stoked about that. If you ever played Vector Man, probably the best run and gun, minus the Contra game that was on there for the Genesis. Probably one of the best run and gun games on the Genesis. Just a really cool looking game. They did some kind of, not mode, like Super Nintendo had the mode, I can't remember the number on it, mode 6 or 7 graphics. This had kind of Sega's version of that, so it was a little bit more of a 3D kind of polish to it. It looks a lot like Donkey Kong Country a little bit, as far as how it kind of looks on the system. But I got those. I've been looking for those for a long time. And then I got two of my first repro cards If you don't know what a repro is, it's basically either a game somebody has made and put on a Super Nintendo cart. There's been like like Metroid games that's been done up in a harder level or stuff like that. There's a Zelda game called the Badlands they've done for the NES, or it's an import that never came here. So I ended up grabbing 2 imports. One was Terra Enigma, which was the last of the quintet games for the Super Nintendo. A set of RPGs that 2 of them came here: Soul Blazer and I can't remember the other one. I have it, but slipped my mind. And then this one was the third one, never came over here. So I picked up that because I've been looking for it. I was going to order it, but it was about $20 cheaper at this store, which I was kind of surprised with, but I was super stoked about. And then I picked up Super Back to the Future 2, which was a really good platform that was, for some reason or another, was only released in Japan. As popular as that movie was, I don't know why it wasn't released stateside. But I ended up getting that. That was one I've been looking at really hard to order. So I was pretty stoked. All in all, a good trip. Got some cool stuff. It was cool to see the Sega Pico. And Joe, you know how cool it is to kind of find something you never thought, even whether you get it or not, to get something like that in your hands that you don't see very often.
I agree. Now, which system was it we used to play the Berenstein Bears?
That was the Genesis. Yeah. I would say that because we never owned a Pico, like handful of people probably did at this point. But
the one in Magic Mart?
Oh no, that was the
That's Panasonic, right?
Is the Panasonic 3DO, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Had a really good tennis game. Was there and had some kind of puzzle board game. I don't know if you remember that, but like you had to go through each room, but it was more like a board game type atmosphere type thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 3DO. I mean, majority of that kind of stunk. Pretty much all of it kind of stunk. No, not the 3DO. It was this Panasonic CDI. That's what it was, a CDI. If I'm not mistaken, I think it had a little, weird controller with it. We had so many weird systems. If what we're talking about is that our grandfather used to be a manager at a store called Magic Mart, mostly out here on the East Coast, mostly in Kentucky and Virginia, most of it, as far as where they're at. But most of the stores were in that kind of area. They had awesome setups. They had some cool systems, and we just used to sit there and play them because, we was the manager's grandkids, and we pretty much got away with murder. But yeah, it's well, almost. I mean, we ran around. We pretty much ran that store.
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't murder anybody.
That's true, except for that one time.
Yeah. Thanks, Stock Boys.
But yeah, so it was pretty cool to see it. Like I said, I'd never seen before, especially complete, minus the box, obviously, but it was pretty cool to have everything there to it. But like I said, I'm a cheapskate, and I passed up on it. So let's move on to some of our major subjects. We already touched one with the Daredevil a little bit here. We'll maybe talk about that a little bit more. But let's talk about the NBA trade deadline or lack thereof, I'm guessing. There wasn't much done. Let's look at some of the key moves.
Because there were no winners.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about maybe how some of these players will eventually, help these teams, but there just wasn't a lot of movement. I'm guessing, and I'm with Zach Lowe pretty much on this a lot, is that a lot of it has to do with that salary cap. Summertime. It's very, very apropos there. As far as why there wasn't a lot of moves, the salary cap's moving up to $92 million this year.
Yeah, something ridiculous,
which is just unheard of. I read an article with Adam Silver, and it was like, no, we didn't prepare for this at all. Well, you had to see this coming at some point. And then the next year, you're looking at almost $102 million or near $100 million, which is just absurd as far as that goes. So, but let's kind of break down some of the deals. It started a little bit earlier, about 2 days earlier. You saw Tobias Harris go to Detroit, which I think is one of the key deals in this, because we both love Tobias Harris.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we both love Tobias Harris. We like him. He's, we were big Tennessee fans, so we loved him in college because he was awesome. He pretty much carried us through a lot of games at times. Really, Joe, I mean, just a good deal. A very good deal as far as the. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to pull up all the deals here without any videos or anything playing, which is going to be looks like impossible. But they ended up sending back Brandon Jennings and I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Isilova. Is that how you close enough? I guess
that's close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
That
was a guy. Go ahead.
The big key is Brandon Jennings because that contract was pretty big.
Yeah, that contract was a pretty big one, and it's weird to see unless Orlando was just like, hey, this and let's just talk about Brandon Jennings for a second. Brandon Jennings is one heck of a ball player. Mm-hmm. When he's healthy, he's very, very good. He's a scorer. He can pass the ball. He's learned how to pass the ball better, like that. So, I think he's as far as what he can do for that team. I think he brings a veteran presence to a young explosive team, and when he's in the lineup, he can make a big difference. But that was a huge contract, as far as trying to take something back.
And let's not forget, let's not forget about 5 years ago he dropped 51 on Stephen Curry.
That's true. I mean, and that's the thing that people forget about Brandon Jennings. He's so explosive. Brandon Jennings is just like I said, when he is. I mean, his current salary I think is for this year's $8.3 million. So he's got that's a lot of hefty. I guess you don't see teams taking that much baggage on, I guess, unless it is a young player, like a Tobias Harris or someone like that has a lot of upside. Jennings has been hurt. I mean, I think the last 2 or 3 years he's been hurt. Had some issues. I believe he broke his ankle last year or broke his leg or something around that nature. So he's had some kind of whacked injury, nothing like ACL tears or anything like that, but just some weird injuries. So hopefully he's over that. But I think he's a good addition to the Magic, and kind of nobody really talked about Jennings in the deal, even though he's a very good basketball player. It's all about Tobias Harris. But I think that Jennings is a good add-on for Magic.
It fits their mold because they're young. They want to stay young. But they have so many point guards on that team.
Well, they do, and I think that they could probably move Oladipo over to a Pier 2. They've been having him kind of run the point over the last couple of years. I say you move him to 2 and have him just, hey, this is your thing, as far as that goes, and just keep him over there.
I'm not even counting Oladipo.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They have 4 true point guards: Brandon Jennings, Shabazz Napier, that Payton kid. And then there's one more I can't even think of his name right now. But, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. Well, they got the Elfrid Payton kid, and that's the kid that they really kind of want to bring along. And that's the kid that I think that they're, at least from what the reports that I said was, at least from what I heard, was that they're not super confident in him just yet. They're not confident as far as him running this offense and running this team. He had a pretty good season last year. Obviously went through some growing pains, and maybe he's just not developing the way that they wanted to. He's a terrific passer, but he's a lot like Rondo. He can't shoot worth a darn. I mean, he just has no mid-range jumper. Reminds me a lot of Rondo. I think they're trying to not let him become a Rondo, or in some cases maybe like a Ricky Rubio that struggles with their jumper, can pass the ball really good, but to have that ability to pass, you've got to make guys come out and get you. And right now, I think they're just a little bit, maybe a little bit behind on his offensive game. But he's a very good defender, and he can really run offense as far as assists. But I think Jennings is probably going to help them have that spark at point guard for when they have to have a guy, primary ball carrier or a ball handler, not only be an assist guy and run the offense, but also score when they have to have a bucket.
And they could go extremely small too. I mean, I say small, I mean small, because Jennings is 6'1", you play him point guard. Mm-hmm. Payton is 6'4", play him as shooting guard, and then have a small forward in Oladipo.
Yeah, I don't think that they can. I mean, just my personal opinion. I don't know if they can put Payton in a shooting guard. I don't think. Yeah, they can. Exactly. Yeah, I think you have to move Oladipo over to shooting guard and bring Payton off the bench. Now, obviously not cut his minutes so much, but kind of split it between him and Jennings, and have situations where Payton can play here, but I need Jennings to play here.
I mean, they could run a 2 point guard system. I mean, both those cats could bring it up the floor.
Right.
Run Jennings off some ball screens. I mean, we know he can shoot and score. So, I mean, there's that. But overall, I mean, they got to a point where this summer they could make moves to either one in free agency, which I know we're going to talk about later, or two, maybe get a couple draft picks with some of them younger guards.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. To be quite honest, I think that unless they move Oladipo to shooting guard, I think Oladipo has to be moved. And that's their big trade chip, that if they feel like they can go forward with the team that they have, and that's the big chip that could bring back possibly a superstar in this draft, like a Ben Simmons or someone like that. I think you have to pull the trigger. I'm surprised someone like Boston or anybody didn't try to pull that trigger, because I think if you bring Oladipo to Boston, I think he blends with that lineup really well as far as what they're trying to do up there. But it's a court. I think that they can make some moves. I like the move from the Magic. I've always liked Brandon Jennings when he's on the floor. Like I said, I think he's very dynamic. Ilyasova is the other guy's name. Ersan Ilyasova, good forward, can rebound, has a pretty good mid-range jumper as well as far as what he can do there. Someone that the Bucks really wanted in the offseason last year, made the trade, and I guess he was expendable at this point of the season. But so that's the first trade. I think that was probably one of the bigger ones that was done. That was before the trade deadline, so technically it really wasn't a trade deadline deal, but one of the bigger ones to go with. You had Courtney Lee traded to the Hornets, Courtney Lee going to Charlotte, PJ Harrison, Chris Anderson, and from the Heat, which is a three-team deal, and 4 second-round draft picks went to Memphis, and then Miami got Brian Roberts. So obviously, yeah, exactly. That was just basically a salary dump for Miami. Save some money. They're trying not to be over the luxury cap because they're going to be taxed for it. So they dropped Anderson, took a smaller contract back, and I think that gets them. They may be able to be a player in free agency, which Pat Riley always figures out, whether or not they're spending money or not, or they're over how to be a player in that setup.
They also got rid of Stokes.
Right, correct. Yeah, we'll touch on that. That's actually the next one. Jordan Stokes to the Pelicans, basically just a second-round draft pick. Just to get rid of, and they actually got some cash back. And I'm sorry, New Orleans got some cash. So, again, trying to get below the salary cap there. We love Jarnell just as much as we do Tobias. Was a big reason we went to the Elite Eight a couple years back, or Sweet 16 a couple years back in the tournament. Just a good player, tough player. Doesn't do, minus rebounding as far as scoring the basketball. Doesn't really have a great offensive game, but he can definitely have some games where he busts out, mostly on the offensive end with boards and stuff, just getting second chance points. But a big kid, I think, to be quite honest, I think New Orleans released Jarnell Stokes. So they didn't even keep him. So hopefully maybe a playoff contender will pick him up, and maybe he can get in a rotation somewhere. But a good ball player.
He's a good ball player. He hasn't been in the pros yet, but I think he'll come around. He's got a big body.
Yeah, and that's what he's got going for him. If he could just, I think he could be like a Ben Wallace top player, to be quite honest. But
I don't think he's good defensively, but
he had his moments at Tennessee where he blocked some shots, and I think he could get. He's a big guy, big wingspan, like he can guard. I just don't think he can guard out on the perimeter, and I think that's where, Wallace didn't really have to worry about it because that was the day of Shaq and Tim Duncan as far as in his prime. A lot of down low guys to deal with. Not so much now, and I think that's where he's going to struggle in today's league, being able to guard a stretch four and make it effective. So I think that's what's going to be the problem. Looking at some other deals, you got Dantes Montehunis going to the Pistons, a young kid from Houston. Really someone that Houston was really high on, but he just couldn't stay on the court. I love this trade for Detroit. I think it gives them, a stretch four. I mean, he has a really good jumper. Not great in the post, but definitely a little bit better of a rebounder. He's got, like I said, a good jumper. Just bringing a young guy. I like what Stan Van Gundy's doing. He's trying to build that team like he did Orlando with Drummond as a center and a bunch of 3-point shooters. And Joe, I think he's these deals kind of show that that's what he's trying to build.
Do they not get Marcus Thornton in that same deal?
Yes. Also, yes, they got Marcus Thornton from Houston.
Another microwave player on the outside.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Marcus Thornton is a guy that nobody really looks at, but he can go off in a heartbeat because he can stroke it from three for sure. Houston got Joel Anthony and a 2016 first round pick. Houston ended up trading him to the Sixers later on in the day. So poor Joel. now that Houston pick is actually top 8 protected. So if Detroit ends up landing in the top 8, Houston will not get that pick for this year. And I think next year it turns into the top 10 protected, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Listen, the NBA draft picks are ridiculous right now. It's just, you got things flying around. I didn't even know that the way that it went as far as a draft pick being top 5 protected and then next year's top 7 protected. So it's I learn something new every day. We'll save some of the bigger ones. I say there's probably 3, maybe 4 bigger ones. And we'll touch on those. I think it's minus the Tobias Harris trade. I think we both can say that Channing Frye to the Cavaliers was one of the bigger ones. Frye's a very good 3-point shooter. He's been in the league for almost 10 years. Just a true stretch 4. He's a better rebounder than people give him credit for, but a true stretch 4. I mean, he's a guy that can clear the lane. You have to respect him because he can shoot the 3. Joe, talk about this trade a little bit and maybe what it does as far as maybe keeping Kevin Love in the post a little bit more.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was a big – it helps him out.
Well, I mean, let's just say this. It's a big trade for this trading deadline.
That's true.
I mean, he's not a superstar, but, you know,
I mean, it helps them spread the floor out a lot more than what – I mean, they can spread the floor out now. But the thing is you can turn Kevin Love – if you have Channing Frye and Kevin Love on the court at the same time, you can focus on Kevin Love in the post, which when he was with the Timberwolves was what made him all-star candidate, was his post play. I think with the Cavs, they tried to turn him too much into a 3-point shooter. And that, I mean, he knocks him down, but that's not what he is. He is a post player. He likes to shoot the jumper from time to time, but with Channing Frye on the court, it spreads him out a lot more. And I think that, you know, with the starting 5 that they have, which is Irving, I think they start Smith at shooting guard. Is that right? Is that right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I'm just a little bit behind you there. I'm sorry. As far as the Google, I'm getting some different stuff in here. We're going to stop the broadcast for 1 second. We'll be right back while we fix this. 1 second.